This is a Syrian Civil War. So the people of Tunisia and Egypt were starting revolts to overthrow their presidents. In March of 2011, peaceful protests broke out in Syria because of their lack of freedom in their economy. Assad was not very happy with this, so he was throwing his own people into prison and killing them. The Free Syrian Army rose to the civil war against Assad along with the Sunni Muslims, Turkey, and the Saudis, while minority religious groups, the Shia Iraqis, and the Iranians supported Assad. In November of 2016, the Syrian government was dropping bombs on the city of Aleppo, and by December 13th, 98% of Aleppo was captured by the government. By now, groups like the Free Syrian Army had decreased in power, and Islamic groups rose in power. 450,000 Syrians have lost their lives due to the civil war. This is how ISIS rose to power. In 2011, ISIS joined rebellion groups against Assad. This was a safe haven for them, as well as easy access to weapons. ISIS got their money from their mini oil fields in Syria, which they sold on the black market. ISIS was taking, kidnapping, killing, and torturing Syrians, which put a lot of fear into them. They were also taking territory in Syria, but by 2016, 1/4 of their territory had been lost.
So with the Syrian Civil War going on, Assad and his Syrian government forces have been doing these airstrikes or bombings of rebel-held areas such as Aleppo and destroying the cities and people's homes as they carry out these attacks. So once people's homes are destroyed, of course they are forced to leave and have to find somewhere to live, and they become automatically displaced. Sometimes people are also forced to leave their homes for other reasons, such as the area that they live in is just too dangerous to be in. They don't want to be involved in with the groups in the area, etc. So as a result of this war going on, 4.9 million people have become refugees, and 6.1 million people have become displaced within their own country. Life for these people in Syria that have been displaced is not very good. They're constantly on the moves, and in addition, their cell phones are very patchy and don't work very well at all. Food in the area is also very scarce and quite expensive. In addition, the Syrian infrastructure is crumbling. It is very difficult to find a job, and for those that do find a job, often that job is with ISIS or other terrorist organizations. This is all in addition to the issues that come with living in the middle of a war zone every single day. Naturally, with such horrible conditions in Syria, many citizens make the decision to leave to move to another country. However, this is very difficult for many of them because they do not have sufficient funds to move to another country, and in addition, many of these other countries actually block their admission.
This is Germany's response to the Syrian Civil War. Germany took in more than 1 million refugees. The moods towards the beginning were pretty positive, and everyone was as excited that there were Syrian refugees there. However, after the first year, the mood started going sour. Anti-immigration groups such as Pegida and AfD were very against Syrian refugees coming to Germany. The Chancellor of Germany said that there was no way that they could keep taking in as many immigrants as they were, so they set the limit at 200,000 immigrants a year. This was Turkey's response to the refugee crisis. Turkey has the largest refugee population in the world with over 2 million people staying there. Turkey is a non-camp country. They thought that the crisis in Syria would be over quick, but they were wrong. Turkey has reached its limit on refugee population, so now it's just starting to overflow. Turkey has closed their borders and said they are only going to open them for emergencies. This is France's response to the refugee crisis. France clearly stated that they were not an asylum. In 2013, France took in 1,300 refugees. In 2016 to 2017, the president said they would only take in 24,000. France's president said, "We need to get a grip on this refugee crisis."
Let's move on to a real story about some actual Syrian refugees. On October 21st, 2013, 17-year-old Khaled and 15-year-old Ibrahim woke up to the sound of their father ordering them to hide in the attic. About a dozen Syrian government soldiers poured into their home.
They heard a bang, and their father was gone. Their father had been a member of a rebel group, the Free Syrian Army. Growing up, Khaled remembers 3 different occasions in which he survived torture at the hands of the Syrian government. He was tied down, electrocuted, and severely beaten. The second time, he and all of his friends were taken while attending the University of Damascus. After spending 2 months in jail, he and only 2 of his friends were released. It can be assumed that the others were killed. Khaled knew after this happened that it was time to leave his city. Khaled, Abraham, and their grandmother moved to the city of Bludan, about 30 miles from Damascus. There, Khaled was taken by the government and tortured for a 3rd time. After this, Khaled knew that it was time to leave the country for good.
Khaled, Abraham, and their grandmother rode for 2 hours to the heavily patrolled Lebanese border, where they were granted entry. Khaled and Abraham lived in the city of Beirut for 14 months. They each worked 16 to 17 hours a day for $800 a month between the two. During this time, the 2 brothers visited a UN office to inquire about becoming refugees. After 7 months and several interviews, the 2 received refugee status. 7 months and even more interviews later, the 2 were finally accepted as refugees to enter the United States. 6 days later, they boarded a plane for the United States.
They were 2 of the 1,500 Syrian refugees that had been accepted to the U.S. at around this time. After arriving in Virginia, an employee of Commonwealth Catholic Charities, a nonprofit organization that works with the State Department to resettle refugees, received them at the airport. The employee drove them to an apartment complex that was to be their new home. The charity covered their housing, their food, and their transportation for 3 months until they could become self-sufficient. Today, both are determined to earn a college degree and make the most of their newfound freedom.
This was the Obama administration's response to the Syrian refugee crisis. The administration has asked for over $5.9 billion since 2011. The Obama administration has used $364 million in humanitarian aid to help Syrians affected by the war. 3/4 of this has been directed inside Syria, and the other 1/4 has been used to agencies inside the region. In September of 2015, Obama asked the State Department for $10,000. The Obama administration over 2016 spent $12,500 on aid in Syria, and the plan for 2017 was to spend $110,000 to help those in Syria affected by the war. Obama just really loves the Syrian refugees. This is Donald Trump's response to the Syrian refugee crisis. President Trump thought that we should not be bringing any more refugees into our country and that we needed tighter borders. He said that the Syrians were bad people. This makes the Syrians very sad. When Trump was elected, he signed an executive order that banned the travel from 6 Middle Eastern countries, including Syria. The president thought that if he enacted this travel ban, that it would mean no terrorists will enter America, even though the number of crimes committed by Syrian refugees is at a whopping number of 0. Because there's a fun fact out there that says Syrians aren't terrorists. This was Hillary Clinton's response to the Syrian refugee crisis. Hillary thought that the Syrians meant good things for America. She promised that if she got elected that she would allow 65,000 Syrian refugees into America. Andra and I believe that we need to open our borders and welcome these Syrians with open arms. That way we can make the Syrians and Americans happy. Here are some of the pros to having Syrian refugees in the United States. It's good for our economy, it boosts the diversity here in the United States, and it's good for the liberals' mental health. Us as Americans need to realize that Syrians are people too, and we cannot abandon them in a time of a crisis. Nobody deserves to have their freedom stolen by a dictator, or be punished for wanting a better life for their family. America is a country founded on immigration and opportunity. We need to open our borders and welcome these Syrians into our country and help them get back on their feet. We need to welcome them like they are fellow Americans.